I'm a rape baby. Warning. Some audiences may find this content disturbing. View at your own discretion. Welcome to the House of Reddit. Today, we share 3 juicy r/nuclear revenge stories from Reddit. I'm a rape baby. As a background, I grew up in a conservative little town, in a conservative rural area heavily dominated by religion. This makes people put great stock on moral purity and appearances. Keeping up the facade is the almost important thing. Everyone must go to church weekly, and people are heavily judged for appearing sinful. This was a bad thing for me, as the cards were heavily stacked against me from birth. You see, I'm a rape baby. My mother lost her parents when she was young, and was taken in by her uncle and aunt. The uncle had an important position in the local religious hierarchy. So when he and a couple of his friends started sexually abusing my mom, it was ignored by everyone. When she got pregnant, it was painted as showing that she's a harlot running around seducing married men. She was cast out. Why she didn't move out of town, I don't know, but yeah. There I came into the picture, born out of wedlock and with no father, branded as sinful outcast. My childhood was bad. I don't go into details, but enough to say that by the time I started going to school, I was quite damaged. School made it worse. I was bullied relentlessly. Teachers were a part of it, since they were all part of the religious community, which saw me as stained. Imagine being the only black kid in a town run by KKK, and you get close to how it was. So yeah, in school I became the trenchcoat kid or its local cultural equivalent. I became weird and hostile on purpose. To turn people off. People were casting me into the mold of being damaged and stained, so yeah, I took it and turned it into something to protect myself with. Despite all this opposition, I managed to graduate with decent grades. A distant aunt, my only decent relative, helped me get into a college in an actual city. She was the black sheep of the family and saw herself in me, maybe? Around this time, my mother drank herself to death. Can't blame her for it. She had a life insurance policy that helped me study. City life liberated me. I went into therapy and managed to treat the wounds that town had sliced into me. I got rid of that town, but I guess some part of it never left me. Years went by. I became a sort of analytical consultant. I work for an international company that does not sort of the box analysis for another companies. I won't go into details to protect my identity, but we assist in solving all kinds of situations. Well, in my line of work, I'm sometimes called in to help downsizing operations. This sucks. I feel for the people who get fired, but if I wouldn't do it, someone else would. A couple of years ago I got an assignment to go into 3 factories and assess them wholesale, then some with a suggestion on which of them to move abroad. My hometown was among those 3 factories. You see, the town I grew up in was one of those one smokestack towns, like we say in my country. There was one factory and some agriculture. Everyone worked in those jobs, like 60% of people in the factory. Rest of the economy rolled around supporting the factory, and the people working there. Most of the people were looking forward at nothing but a job at the factory after getting out of school. The religious community running the town ran the factory as well. The big shots in the community tended to be the bosses in the factory. This meant that the factory wasn't run that well. Promotions were based on holiness, not on merit or skill. The trip back to the hometown was glorious. Most people didn't recognize me at first. The chubby outcast had become outwards just another corporate drone. I inspected all the paperwork, listened all their speeches and lies, audited the processes. In the process I dropped hints and finally they got who I was. The factory people threw party for me then for the old time's sake. Many of my old school buddies were there. We remembered fake good times together. I threw shadow on every part by pulling up some certain event of bullying I had endured, just see the atmosphere turn awkward. Then I laughed at it like it was always a joke and I had grown out of it. Inside I was seething with hatred and enjoying this all. I really loved seeing their faces, seeing what they had become, because fuck it, I was going to take it all away from them. In the end they seemed relieved, believing that they were lucky it was me doing the audit, that the hometown boy would protect them. After my visit lasting a couple of days was over, I cruised around the town in my rented car, just to see how the people lived and to remember what it was like. My state of mind was something close to sexual arousal. I had never understood why people pursue positions of power, but yeah, now I understand. The rest is, as they say, history. I wrote a really scathing report, documenting every little flaw and mistake ever done in the town plant. I didn't need to lie or fabricate. I simply took things that existed and polished them till they looked even worse than they were. The factory shut down, and in the following 3 years, the town died. No business venture ever came to replace it. Drug use and alcohol use spiked, as did crime and domestic violence. Lives fell apart, families fell apart. They still haven't recovered, save for a few souls who moved away. I still stalk them on social media sometimes, enjoying how shitty their lives are, how they all finally got to pay for what they did to me and my mom. I don't feel a slight bit of remorse. If I could do it all again I would, only I'd first make it so I could be present to watch when they received the news about the factory being shut down. Hell, in my fantasy version of the events, I'd stay in town for a year just to see everyone fall apart. In reality, I will only go there back once when my uncle finally dies. I'm going to go and piss on his grave. We get revenge on her for being a total witch. I went to a sort of pre-bachelorette party for a sorority sister, who I hadn't seen in a while and who turned out to be a complete bridezilla witch. One of our other friends from college is pregnant from a one-night stand, and does not know who the father is but is keeping the baby. Bridezilla figured out that she is going to be about 8 months pregnant at the wedding, and wouldn't let her be a bridesmaid. She was really nasty and called her a tramp, and said she could have gotten an abortion. The girl got really upset and left. Almost everybody else did too. One of the girls out partying with us is a nurse practitioner. She invited the remaining girls back to her apartment. I don't know what she gave Bridezilla, but she was cold out really fast. That's where it got really weird. I had way too much to drink and crashed on the couch when the other girls left. I woke up a couple of hours later looking for the bathroom and I walked in on the nurse and Bridezilla. Bridezilla was still out cold, but the nurse had her naked from the waist down and on the bed with a bunch of pillows under her legs spread like she was giving her a gyno exam. I then saw her hold something up and laugh and realized what she had just done. She had removed Bridezilla's intrauterine contraceptive device. I got really upset at first and started yelling at her that she was a psycho, so she just flushed it down the toilet and reminded me that if I said anything Bridezilla would probably have both of us arrested. I realized she was right, of course. And it didn't help I was really drunk. When she saw I was backing down, she laughed and explained that her IUD was the copper kind with no hormones to stay behind in her body to prevent ovulating and that with any luck Bridezilla would be showing a baby bump on our wedding day. At first I was going to keep my mouth shut, but I had second thoughts and felt guilty and tried to contact Bridezilla later to warn her to somehow, but she wouldn't return my calls and texted me that she was angry at me for inviting our pregnant friend out that night. She texted some really nasty things about her. So I decided Bridezilla really deserved what was coming to her. But I didn't want to bring an unwanted baby into this world. I spread the rumor that she had gotten really drunk that night and told us she was getting her IUD removed because she wanted to make sure her fiancé was on the hook with a baby, just in case he got cold feet before the wedding. Word got back to him, and he insisted on checking for her strings himself and then dragging her to the walk-in the clinic when he couldn't feel them. By the end of her exam the wedding was off. Word is she just got it and. So not only did we get revenge on her for being a total witch, we also saved a nice guy from a bad marriage. I screwed his brains out last weekend. He deserved it, and so did she. Don't talk bad to your neighbors or they will ruin your marriage. We thought nothing of it until the genital neighbor came screeching out the front done hurling abuse at his wife and barely able to string coherent sentences together while in his drunken rage. His wife, not wanting to alarm the neighborhood, asked him to stop yelling because the neighbors, my family, were outside. In his stupor he came to the conclusion that because this fight was happening on his property it was illegal for us to listen to it. He turns and starts screaming at my father and calling him fat and other terrible names. He then proceeded to walk to the edge of the property line and threatened to kick my dad's butt. To paint you a picture of my dad, he is about 250 pounds of pure fuck you, and doesn't put up with people treating him bad. My dad gave his concealed handgun to my mom, calmly walked out to the property line and looked the neighbor dead in the eye. He then gave the neighbor a choice, walk away or to persist and face the consequences of his actions. The neighbor, being a drunken piece of shit, decided to scream at my father, saying dumb stuff like "hit me you fat bastard and I will fuck you up." Taking that as the answer, my dad looked over at the neighbor's mortified wife and said, "I'm sorry you have to find out this way, but he has been cheating on you." She starts to cry and the neighbor somehow turns redder than he had been mere moments before. His wife quickly put the traumatized children in the car and sped off, all while her husband begged her to let him explain. After she drove off he went inside and we don't hear a peep out of him the rest of the night. In the months following this incident we only saw his wife there a couple of times. In the end she left his butt with most of what he owned, including his SUV that he was super proud of. That is all there was to it, and the moral of the story is don't talk bad to your neighbors or they will ruin your marriage. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If you have any suggestions for future videos, please let us know in the comments below. Turn on the notifications to know when we post new videos. Thank you for coming to the House of Reddit.